Seeing that the latest episode of The Bad Batch was titled Reunion, my immediate reaction was, of course, we all assumed Crosshair would be in this episode, and I was right, that's no surprise. But boy was I not prepared for the other reunion fans got at the end of the episode. I don't usually record reactions because I'm generally very boring and stoic when I watch things, but the gasp that I let out when I realized Cad freaking Bane was back, I am so psyched. But we'll get to that later. The episode begins on Kamino, with Crosshair reporting Clone Force 99's location to Admiral Rampart and Lama Su. I love seeing how different that office looks as the Empire takes control. It's no longer the sterile white we're so used to seeing, it's covered in holograms and technology, and it's not like the all-white rooms were subtle, but all that neon is a purposeful and stark contrast. The Empire takes what it wants and does what it wants, wherever it wants. Lama Su requests the Bad Batch be taken in alive, and Rampart doesn't care. He's all about Project Warmantle, not clones. He wants to phase the clones out. So he orders the termination of all of Clone Force 99, including Omega. That leads to Lama Su and Nala Se's machinations as they work behind the Empire's back. Lama Su says they need to speed things up to specifically get Omega back. There's been some questions about whether or not Omega was the enhanced clone that they needed. Omega was the obvious choice, but now we know that for sure. It also sounds like the Kaminoans were the ones to hire Fennec Shand. As Nala Se points out, they already have someone on the job. But Lama Su wants to hire more bounty hunters to make sure someone gets Omega back to them before the Empire gets her killed. Back on Bracca, the Batch decide to scrap the Venator so they can have a big payday and erase their debt to Sid. I like that Echo continues to be a voice of reason. They wouldn't have to worry about Sid if they just went with Rex. Hunter is still wrestling with what it means to be a parent, I think. He wants to protect Omega and to give her the best life she can. I mentioned this last week, and I think he will eventually decide the best thing to do is fight for a better galaxy for her instead of scraping by while they hide. I'm sure we haven't seen the last of Rex, but for now the Batch is still adapting. I still see Saw Gerrera's line from the first episode as a thesis for the series: adapt and survive or die with the past. Unfortunately, adaptation is rarely smooth, so Hunter is all excited about scrapping the Venator, a literal symbol of his past, to fund their future, and Echo argues against being arms dealers, which is fair. Smuggling explosives isn't the most noble of causes, it's a means to an end. Still, I loved that the plot actually used Bracca for its intended purpose. It felt like another fun, if small, connection to Fallen Order. The delay means they're cornered by Crosshair and the Empire. I thought the clones' predictability was a really nice detail. Hunter knew exactly what their protocols were and how to avoid them. The whole original point of the clone army was that they can think creatively and independently. When the Batch easily avoided the clones, I thought it was pretty convenient none of the clones looked down the other hallway, but now I think that's the point. They have their orders and they follow them to the letter, like droids. With the inhibitor chips active, they don't think even remotely creatively anymore. They follow protocols and procedures, and that's easier to predict. That said, as I chastise the clones for being predictable, Crosshair knows the Bad Batch, and he traps them because they're predictable. He knows their moves and the way they think. I was hoping we might see some hesitation from Crosshair in this episode, some hope for the Batch that their brother was still on their side deep down, especially now that Wrecker has direct experience with how the chips work. We might still get that in the future, but for now, Crosshair is still completely cruel, ordering his troops to aim for Omega first, so for now he is still insanely easy to root against. I loved all of the Batch's plans to escape their captors. They felt very Han Solo in that way that you have to make things worse and just hope that eventually makes things better. They fire off a massive artillery gun to break the deck they're on to pieces. Then to escape the firing Venator engines, they simply blow it up and fall to the ground. I really loved that Crosshair's cruelty literally came back to burn him. He can't get a shot on the Batch, so he orders the engines turned on to incinerate them, which is terrible. Their escape causes the engine to shift and fire directly into Crosshair's face, injuring him pretty bad. But it's a good reminder that acting in hatred, cruelty, and revenge might work, but it often winds up doing just as much, if not more damage, to yourself. I wonder if he'll continue to inadvertently hurt himself in this way over the course of the series. That could make for some interesting parallels with Vader and so many other Star Wars villains that lose their humanity by going to the dark side. I've said this before, but you don't have to be Force sensitive to act as a tool for the dark side, and it should have consequences. I did find myself on more than one occasion wondering if Crosshair's chip would start to malfunction and let his true self back out. He gets hit by an artillery gun, debris falls on him, and then he gets blasted in the face by an engine, but his chip seems to be holding strong. I'm fine with that, it makes sense considering Tarkin dialed Crosshair's chip up to 11, but still. Despite everything, I'm hopeful that he gets a moment of clarity at some point, that he's able to rejoin his true family. Omega and Hunter are separated from the group, so they reach the shuttle first, and the way they executed this scene was perfection. When I saw all the clones scattered about, I thought we were getting some heroic moment of like, nice try, Crosshair, but the Bad Batch has already escaped. And then Hunter and Omega come onto the scene, and that's when I remembered the stuff about the bounty hunters at the beginning. The rest of the episode was so engaging, I completely forgot about that extra threat, almost until you hear Cad Bane's voice. Again, I say this scene was flawless. If you're gonna bring Bane back, this is exactly how you do it. And you bring along Seth Green as Toto, too. Kevin Kiner's Western-style score builds up the shootout and gives the audience just enough time to wonder what's gonna happen. Because I'm thrilled to see Bane again after all these years, but is he really gonna be taken down by a clone right away? Nope, he shoots Hunter right in the chest and stuns Omega, and they're gone. What an ending. Hunter is fine, of course, injured but fine. He tells the others that a bounty hunter took Omega, and that's how we leave everything. No heroic music to end the episode. It's very ominous. We're halfway through the season with this episode, and even though we're not getting any kind of extended break between this episode and the next, it feels like a mid-season finale. We've fallen in love with Omega, and now she's being taken back to Kamino, I assume. But the Kaminoans are working behind the Empire's back, so are they going to keep all of this secret from them? And when the Bad Batch shows up to rescue her, how do the Kaminoans explain that? What will the Kaminoans do with Omega? Does she have a chip after all? What if they activate it? And what about Cad Bane? Is he sticking around? Will we get an adaptation of his unfinished Clone Wars arc with Boba Fett? Will Cad Bane and Crosshair have a toothpick fight? There are so many questions. Omega's capture can have so many cascading effects for the rest of the season. It's a great way to bring a bunch of lingering story threads together, as well as some new ones like Bane. This first season has felt so deliberate in its storytelling. I've been impressed every week, and moments like these, I just know it's going to be a fun day to be a Star Wars fan. I'm looking forward to finishing this video so I can see other people's reactions. But that's all I have to say about Reunion. I cannot wait to see where the Batch go from here and how they're able to save Omega, because of course they will, but what happens along the way is a terrifying prospect. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Bad Batch coverage, follow us on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page where we're releasing audio commentaries for all these episodes. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.